little bit of this last week, but for those of you who are new, my name is Susan Ennis. I'm a congregational care pastor here at Asbury, and these seminars are born out of being run through the gauntlet myself with my mom, and knowing that once they break something or have a heart attack, or even if someone passes away, the shock and everything you go through at that point, you are so unprepared. You're so unprepared. And the best way to handle all this as we grow older is to actually be prepared. And I feel like God truly wants us to have quality of life, whatever that may be. If you'll remember 2 weeks ago when we were here with Chaplain Sharissa Yoho from Wesleyan Hospital, she said, you've got to decide what quality of life is for you as well. And you've got to let your loved ones know what quality of life is for you. So we're going to do this so that you're aware for yourselves of what you're going to be up against, what your family will know and need to know on your behalf. Just kind of all that good stuff. Now, I mentioned that Chaplain Sharissa was from Wesleyan Hospital. This evening you're going to see that Annie and Todd and Brian are from Hillside Mortuary across the street. Annie's just a really good friend of mine, so I hit her up first. Asbury Church is not going to promote anybody. You'll notice on this other table over here we have all sorts of retirement homes represented. You get to choose your hospital, you get to choose your funeral home, you get to choose all this, but you need professionals here to answer these questions because I can't answer some of the things you're going to ask. I can't do that for you. So that's why we're here, and that's what this is all about, and your attendance here just means a whole bunch to me because it lets me know that God's really laid something on our heart that was needed and wanted, and it's a good thing. So this evening is going to be a little more question and answer type format. Let's open this evening with prayer. Father God, we are so very thankful that you want to love on us and that you are going to find us useful and use us for your glory no matter what we think of ourselves. So we lift that up to you, Lord, that as we become seniors, we would continue to glorify you, that you would work through us, and that we would be guided with wisdom, with your love, and Lord, with patience with ourselves and with others. So this evening, just bring to mind the questions that really need to be heard and answered. And Lord, just be with Andy and Brian and Todd as they work to answer them to the best of their ability. We praise you and thank you for our gathering here in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
So this is Annie Morris. She is an assistant manager and a funeral director at Hillside Mortuary West. And they work now with Dignity, so they are part of Lakeview and Rest Haven, correct, all that sort of stuff. And then she's brought a couple of gentlemen with her who are going to also help other pre-need questions or just the business end of things and that sort of stuff. So you're in really good hands tonight, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Again, hi and welcome to everyone. When Pastor asked me to do this, I told her, oh, sure, I can do that, but I usually don't speak in front of groups. I do run the funeral services, but I don't get up and talk like this, so I'm a little nervous, so pardon me if you can, because I don't do this part. So thank goodness I have Todd and Brian who do a little bit more public speaking than I do. So I do want to thank Pastor Susan for the opportunity to come and visit with you all this evening. Again, I'm a licensed funeral director and assistant manager at Hillside Funeral Home West, just up the street off of 13th. I've been there about a year and a half. I've been in the funeral industry for about 19 years. I started working right out of high school, and I've been licensed here in the state of Kansas for 14 years. So there, now you kind of know my age. I'm about 37. So I have learned from a lot of the best women funeral directors, and I give them praise. Not that a man can't do it, but I think a woman has a good touch. So anyway, also with me is Todd Moore. He is our family service manager. And Brian Shercock is one of our family service counselors. So they're going to talk, they do a lot of the pre-need side when families come in ahead of time and take care of their arrangements. That's kind of that's their specialty. What I do is, so when a family loses a loved one, they're coming in directly into me to sit down and plan those arrangements and plan the funeral services itself. So that's kind of what I specialize in. So we're kind of the two different groupings. So if you have questions, if something pops in your mind, just like if I'm making an arrangement, please stop and ask me. That way you don't have to write it down. We did supply a few things in our little goodie bags tonight. I like goodies, so there's a notepad, there's a pen in there for you all, a couple other little things that I thought was kind of interesting, so you're welcome to keep those and take those or use them, whatever you need to do. So I kind of wanted to start out this evening going over the information that's needed when a death has actually occurred and when you come in to meet with the funeral director. We offer a tool at all our Dignity Memorial locations, including Hillside, that we like to use that can hold a lot of information that's needed at the time of death. As a funeral director, things that I'm going to quiz you on that you probably might know the answers to, but at that minute, you're not going to remember a lot of them. So this little tool here is our personal planning guide, so I'm just kind of reference it and go through that with you all. The main things when you come in that we really need to start the process to do an arrangement is what we call your important information, or the vital statistic information. When we sit down to go over information for like the certified copies of the death certificates with the family, this is all your history. It's your full given name, where you were born, your mother's name. Her maiden name is very important when filing the death certificate. Your father's name, your social security number. Those things are very important things that we need to go through and file a death certificate. It kind of shows it all here. I highlighted a little bit. Another thing that's important to us is military service. We like to know the branch and discharge papers. If you have those, that's a tool. You know, that form is something we need right away to schedule those honors if that's something that your family wishes. So that needs to be in a location that can be picked up directly, so the family can bring that to the funeral home, so we can have that right away. Really, we sit down and kind of go over the information, and then we work through with your family with going through the obituary information, and then we sit down and kind of plan your services. So in this book, again, it goes very, very detailed. I just kind of went through and highlighted the important things to talk with your family as far as a funeral director is concerned at that point. Is what type of service that you want to have, whether that be a traditional funeral. And what we mean by traditional, there's a couple different things out there. Traditional would be if there's a casket, a traditional burial where you have a cemetery plot and you're going to be embalmed and have a viewing. So when we say traditional, that's kind of what we're thinking as a funeral director when we ask you that. Another option too is cremation. That's becoming more, I don't want to say popular, but it is because of just families moving and the convenience of being able to have that take place and then have a service at a later date when families can all get together and celebrate that person's life. So a couple different terms there, you're probably aware of them. So that's two main things that we like to ask when we are visiting with a family on the phone when that call comes in and we're touching base with them. First off is, what type of service are you wanting to have for your loved one? So that in your mind is something really to discuss with your family, your preference on which you would prefer. So that gives an opportunity in here to fill that out also. Any questions over that part? Okay, good. I can talk a lot too, by the way. Ask Pastor Susan, she's aware of that. Yeah. Yeah, so, and there is in this little book an area to put in military service information, what branch you served, if you were in a war, where you're discharged, where your medals are. A lot of information in here can be put, that way your family knows where those papers are. One thing we get asked a lot is at the time of death, if we notify Social Security. We do notify Social Security for you. When we do the death certificate online, everything is filed online now. We put that Social Security number in, and it automatically red flags that if it doesn't match the person's full given name. Then we can go back to the family and say, you know, we're off a number somewhere because Social Security is flagging that back to us. So we do notify Social Security for you. There are steps as a spouse to take once that has happened through Social Security that we don't do as far as helping you through that. We just notify them for you. So that kind of talks about up here. So I know that's usually a question is, who notifies Social Security? So we do notify them, but then you have to kind of go and do your own calling the Social Security office, set an appointment time, taking half the day to do that because it does take a long time through them, and things that are needed to go to the Social Security office. This book does also have information about where your will, if you have a will, where it's written, who maybe wrote the will, an attorney. So it kind of gives an opportunity to have that information in there. It goes into a lot of detail about financial, where you bank, where your credit information is, life insurance policies. Again, that's something as a funeral director we're asking at that call is, does your loved one have a life insurance policy that you're wanting to use to take care of services? If you do, please bring that in. We'll help you kind of go through that. So that's good to have that information to know where your family can get that if they need it. So to bring to us to help them through that. Let me see what else. It goes down to a lot of detail as far as what kind of service. Something new, I call it new, that's starting in the funeral industry is celebrating someone's life. So we sit down, or I'm a very detailed person, if you can't tell. I think Todd kind of wings it, not me. I'm very nervous and detailed. So when we when I sit down with the family, I usually ask a lot of questions as kind of explain to me, tell me about your mom, tell me some about her hobbies, what'd she like to do? Oh, she raised, 5 boys, I bet she had to cook a lot. How many gallons of milk did you go through? Things like that. I kind of like to get to know the person that I'm serving, the person that's passed. I like to get to know them through the family by asking a lot of questions. So that helps, I think, as a funeral director, be able to celebrate that person's life. Whether you do a little something or something extravagant, it's something definitely that's changing in the funeral industry. It's not what we call becoming more of a cookie cutter funeral, where you have a prayer, obituary, a song, and you're done. It's more of, we're talking more about that person. We're having music they enjoyed. I've played everything from Elvis to Aerosmith. I mean, you name it, I've played it in a service because it should be about your likes. And yes, your family is gonna, giggle and get a chuckle about, oh my gosh, I can't believe they picked this to play. But that's the thing about celebrating someone's life, is getting that giggle out of it. Oh, I can't believe that, So I have a lot of stories about different celebrations of life services that I've done that are just phenomenal. They're beautiful. So if you want to talk about it later, we can. So any questions? I know, yes.
Wait.
Oh, yes.
Stan, I should have known you were talking.
Time
I should
out.
have had it by me.
The booklet that you got,
Yes.
are those here tonight?
They are not here tonight.
Are they online?
They're not online. They're not online. So if you want one, we are more than happy to get you one. We have like a sign-up sheet. You can just sign up and we will get you one whether you stop by the funeral home and pick it up or we bring it to you. Yes.
Jump in real quick.
Let Todd, yeah.
And the reason for that is because the book goes into such detail that it's helpful for a seasoned counselor to sit down and kind of go through everything with you, because my guess is you're going to have questions about certain things, and that's the only reason why we don't make them available online and we don't bring a ton of them out. There is a lot of information in there that we just want to make sure we're entering the right information in the appropriate spots.
There's a lot of information that the person might not have with them. Sure.
Yes.
At that moment. True. That's the reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And in that case, in this book that she's referring to, the personal planning guide, that is something that you all keep.
Yeah.
That is something that you keep in your home, that your family knows where it's at. We don't see that book at the funeral home. Okay, that is for because it does have some private and personal information there, bank account information, that type of thing, that whoever would be handling your funeral arrangements might need access to shut down a bank account or something like that. So no, that's something that stays with you the entire time. And then, as always, feel free to pick up the phone if you have questions about it. But yeah, we try to walk you through it and guide you through it and let you know what information you are going to need to perhaps look up and then enter it at a later time. So
Yeah.
good question.
And I've had families that have had these and fill them out and bring them in at the time of arrangements and say, my aunt, she wrote everything she wanted in this book. Here, follow it to a T. And I'm like, oh, this is wonderful, because it is filled from front to back. And it's great. As a funeral director, I don't have to quiz you a ton of questions because that's what I do. It's all in here and it's all ready to go. So it is something that way, just like if you tell your family, hey, everything's in the lockbox at the bank. Well, it might be beneficial not to put this in the lockbox at the bank because sometimes they can't get to that. So at the time when someone passes. So yes.
Is there a place in there for you? Is there a place in there for you to put maybe your Bible, the person's favorite Bible passages or songs,
Yes.
that kind of thing?
Yes,
Okay.
it goes, I kind of skipped those. It goes through so many details from what type of flowers you want, your songs, your Bible verses, the pastor you want to do the service, clothing, jewelry, hobbies. I mean, it gets down to every little detail in some of these pages I didn't really cover, but yeah. jewelry, if you wanted to wear your, like, I'd like to have all my jewelry on because I love jewelry and sparkly, and then take it off. But, you know, that's me. So,
And
yeah.
remember, they're just across the street, so
Yeah.
if you want to pick one up on any given day, it's really
We have
handy
them.
to the church. Because half of you all live here half the time anyway.
We have them available right at our door, too. So if you pop in and say, hey, I want one of those books you talked about, I'm like, oh, here you go. And you have any questions then, too, I'm glad to talk to you. We do have one that is just geared for veterans also. Yeah, I'm going to let Brian talk about that, too.
Hi guys. So the veteran planning guide is specifically for veterans. It isn't the same information as the personal planning guide. They are two completely separate animals. So if you are a veteran, you can get both, one of each, obviously. This goes into great detail about all of the benefits that a veteran is eligible for receiving if they're honorably discharged from the military. Cemetery benefits, burial at a veteran cemetery. It has all the forms. Some of the forms that are in this book were created by our company because they didn't exist until we created them in order to get things like your military medals that you're entitled to if you've lost them or you never received your ribbons or your medals. There's a form we created to submit to the government to request those. There's a presidential memorial certificate that your family is entitled to receive after your death, and it's signed by the current sitting president to be sent to your family. You can request as many copies as you'd like. It's a very nice certificate you can hang on the wall thanking you for your loved one's veteran service. Again, these are free. We usually have some available at any location, or we can deliver them to you. But again, it's two completely separate animals. So if you're a veteran, ask for both, or at least this one, because it explains a great deal of information.
Yeah. It does have forms in there too, like at the time as a director that we fill out for the flag application, because we get the flag for a veteran service. I help every veteran that I take care of to apply for the VA burial benefits. It talks about that in there. There's an application for that. So it is a little bit more detailed, like Brian said, about the VA part itself.
Do we have veterans in the room?
Okay.
Thank you for your service.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. And unfortunately, see, I don't need a microphone, do I?
Here, let me.
Do I need a microphone? See, I don't like to be tethered by wires, so the wireless is great.
Okay.
So I kind of like to move around. You want me to hold that too?
Yeah.
Does it go with it?
Yeah.
I like to move around. I'm gonna keep this guy busy over here. He's gonna have to move back. I've got a face for radio, unfortunately. Not big video tape. But just to jump in real quick, again, the Veterans Planning Guide goes with the Personal Planning Guide. So it's if you are a veteran, you're gonna want to pick up both books. Unfortunately, and we see it every day, we'll have a veteran pass away. And the family will come in and say, oh, he's a veteran, the VA is going to take care of him. Guys, that's not the case. I wish it was, believe me. You all deserve it, but that's not the case. So just be mindful of that. And I wanted to quickly add that while we're on the issue.
You handle the headstones also, or?
The headstone, with your discharge papers or DD-214, honorable discharge papers, the VA does provide a bronze, what we call memorial, and it's a 24 by 12.
Well, they vary depending on the cemetery requirements where you're at or going to be buried. The VA cemetery, if you're going to be in a VA cemetery, will provide all of that at no charge, and they'll order it for you. If you're buried in a private cemetery, you're still eligible for a military headstone for the veteran only, and it's going to be their flat bronze, like Todd said, or they do also offer the uprights and the flat marble, which is what my dad has. But they do not pay for the installation of it, and they do not pay for if there's a granite that needs to go under like a bronze marker. The granite isn't covered, nor is the spouse covered in any way. So all you get is the literal veteran marker in a private cemetery. So there's still other charges that need to be addressed, and you can take care of that.
Yeah. So the government says, thank you for your service. Here's a 24 by 12 piece of bronze. That's unfortunately about it. And then you're on your own. You're absolutely right. So.
If the family doesn't have the DD-214, can you guys help them apply for that through the Record Center in St. Louis?
We can.
Yes.
We have helped several people apply for that because, yeah, there's a lot of times where children are taking care of their parents who are deceased and like you said, they have no clue where that information is. So yes, we have the resources to help get that DD 214 taken care of.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you repeat the question, since I'm not running around?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, she was wanting to know. See, I'm hogging the microphone. I told you.
Gosh.
Be up there all day. She was wanting to know if a veteran does not have his DD 214 handy, which is discharge papers, if we can assist in obtaining those. And the answer is absolutely. And Brian mentioned something about time.
Well, Annie, I think would be better served at the time of need, there's some time restraints we have to be aware of in that.
Yes, at the time, yes, yes, at the time of death, we need that discharge right away. It can be very difficult as a funeral director, not being the next of kin of obviously your loved one, to try to track that and even get a copy from the VA. It can be done. I'm not going to say it can't, but we have to go through a lot of hoops to try to find something. The best thing, again, in that Veterans Planning Guide, there is a form in there that you can get something, whether it's like the medical information or something that will be very similar to a discharge paper. Basically, it's like a certificate that says they were in the service when they, what branch, when they served, and when they were out. And we can use that to get any type of benefits. But it is something we really need prior to the death because it's very hard to get that. We can pull a few strings, but we're not that good. So, yeah. I do have over on the table too for the veterans, if you would like, there's 10 important facts about your VA burial benefits. So I have those available. If anybody wants one of those, you can have one. It goes into a lot of the details, kind of like we're talking about the headstone, getting a discharge, things like that. So we do have that available. I did bring a pamphlet about 10 things everyone should know about planning a funeral or memorial service. This has got a lot of information I think that will be helpful. Like number 3 is kind of interesting, where you talk about it with your family and incorporate their wishes. Remember I talked about maybe you love Elvis and you want some Elvis songs, but maybe your family doesn't want a whole service about Elvis, which I'd like to have one with the Elvis impersonator. I haven't done that yet, so I'd like to have that. So if anybody, let me help you with that. So that is kind of just talking to your family and telling them what they want, or what you want really is so important. Whether you put it down, put it in paper, put it in one of our books. I can't stress that enough because I have families that come in and they just sit across this table blankly staring at me. And I have to walk them through the worst day of their life. I know you don't want to be there with me. I understand that. We're not the place you want to come to. We're not the people that you want to see. But we are here to help you. And we do the best that we can with information that you can give us. A lot of the times if families do not have everything, we'll make notes and send you home to try to find it. So do you have any other questions concerning kind of the at-need situation or that when a death has occurred as far as funeral director is involved? So one question too that we get asked a lot, or that we ask families, is who might need a certified copy of the death certificate? I have a form that I walk through every family with that talks about who might need an actual certified copy of the death certificate. Most of the time, Social Security is going to want to see that if there's a surviving spouse. That's an actual certified that you pay for. The banks, depending situation, they want you to take that certified copy in and let them see it, and then they'll make a copy if they need to, and then they'll give it back to you. So when families come in and say, oh my gosh, I need to order 15 of those, I say, well, let's go through our list and kind of think about that, because I feel like I'm cutting in now. Okay, most places is wanting just to look at that certified copy these days. They're not actually needing an original certified copy. Here in the state of Kansas, they're $15 per certified copy. All death certificates now are filed online. So that means we send all the information in. The doctors all sign it online. There's no actual mailing of death certificates back and forth like it used to be way back in the day when I started, when it took like 6 to 8 weeks to get a death certificate. I can tell you now we can get them within a week and a half. If that doctor's on top of signing that for us and we get it ordered, I've had it just last week. We had it by the start of the Monday. I had it by Friday in my hand. So it's definitely changed for the better. So every doctor in the state of Kansas signs online now. So we submit all the information, and that too is an important thing for your primary doctor information to be given like to the hospital, because that is information that we take when we bring your loved one into our care. So we know who to send that death certificate for. that is something that I do double check with families to make sure that this is a doctor that's been doing most of the care for your loved one, so we can get that submitted. And then we do order them online too, which is a lot faster. So there's a little bit of charge for filing by credit card and then a $2 mailing fee. So they're a little bit more than just $15 per, but depending on how many you need.
Okay, I have a question. Well, and Annie and I had talked a little bit about this. Somewhat like choosing, this sounds really ridiculous, but choosing your retirement home, you also need to choose your cemetery because they all have different rules. And so I'm going to let Annie explain some of that too, about how you kind of want to know where you want to go because they all have different requirements.
Yeah, and I might lean on to Brian and them for some of the cemetery regulations, but like here in Wichita, the cemeteries are not ran by the state of Kansas. Each cemetery is ran by the people basically that owns it. They don't really have a regulation. So I know sometimes families get a little confused about, well, who can I call for a complaint? Well, you pretty much have to talk to them because there's not a state board like we have for the mortuary science part or for the funeral homes. We have a state board that regulates us. The cemeteries have different requirements. Most of the cemeteries here in Wichita, like inside the city limits, they're going to require what we call an outer burial container, which could be a vault or a two-piece concrete box. So most of them are going to require that for a traditional burial to put a casket in. That's a cemetery requirement. So when you come in and we go over information like that with you, we need to know what cemetery your plots are at, or your niches, or wherever your cemetery is located. Because we can go to very rural cemeteries, and we go here in Wichita, we go all around the state of Kansas for burials. So each cemetery is just different. I know Pastor Susan didn't know that. So Brian can tell you more about Lakeview or Rest Haven's, gardens and things like that, what they have available. I bury at both locations. I mainly, it seems like, go out to smaller cemeteries and around. So, 2-3 hours in the middle of nowhere of flatland of Kansas is quite interesting. And when you track down who's in charge of the cemetery, that's another fun adventure of, well, don't you know, Bob knows, he knows, call him. Now, I'm not sure. Now, George might have taken over. So that's how we get as a funeral director. We do a lot behind the scenes that you all don't know what we do. So, yeah, so that's kind of fun, which I like those. I like a challenge when we do that, so.
And you can go out of state too, right?
Yes, we can. Oh, sorry.
You're okay.
Okay, so she asked if we could go out of state. We can. We just have to, if there is a burial or a service in another state, we have to have a licensed funeral director in that state stand in. I myself am just licensed here in Kansas. So if I go to Oklahoma, I need to call a funeral home down there in Oklahoma and say, I'm coming in for a graveside service in your cemetery. Do you have a funeral director that can meet me out there? Do you have a cost for that so I can use your license? They don't really do anything but stand there. So that's really what they do. Typically, they're just going to do that out of good faith because they know somebody down there because it's a small town. And they know such and such, and they know, and they're there socializing. So that's a good thing, that's something that we have to do is call and get a license to be there. So Brian asked when a death does happen out of state, perfect, like say they pass away in Oklahoma. Yes, that's close, but they need to be embalmed to come across state lines into Kansas. So even if their wishes are cremation, we tell families, if you're not wanting to hold any other services here in Wichita, you're not wanting to have a viewing or, caskets, full service, and then cremation to follow, probably the best thing to do is to contact a funeral home there in Oklahoma and have the cremation done there. Because otherwise you're going to have the cost of embalming and then them transferred into our care and then service, charges for what we do. If it happens that there's a traditional service, depending on where they're at, if they're all the way out of state, I just had a family I'm serving tomorrow, their loved one passed in Alabama. And the funeral home there, whatever state they pass, is typically the funeral home that will set the flight arrangements and get them back into our care here to Wichita. That too can be tricky because our airport, even though it's supposed to be great, there's only one carrier that will bring in human remains into Wichita. Yeah, so sometimes to fly them in, they might have to be flown into Kansas City or maybe into Oklahoma City depending, and then we have to drive down and bring them into our care. So if we can't get a flight into Wichita that will hold them, then we have to get to the next larger airport. So, is any questions over that?
Stan was asking who the airline is.
Who's the carrier?
Delta. Yeah.
Qantas.
Yeah. Delta is the main carrier.
Why are the others so boosted?
I don't know. I just know that what I've been told is that they have the larger airplanes to accommodate the size of remains, whether it be casketed, that comes to be flown in. So that's one reason. I don't know for sure. I mean, we have a thing called Eagle's Wings that when we do our shipping, that's who we use, and they know at every airport that will accept and fly out human remains. So. Okay, that's all right.
If somebody's cremated out of state, can they fly the ashes to Wichita
They
without
can.
a problem
Yes.
on any airline?
Right, as long as you have a permit, an out-of-state okay, sorry. As long as the funeral home that you're working with is going to give you what they call an out-of-state trans burial permit, it's going to state their name, a lot of the information when they were cremated, things that they need to travel with those cremains. And you have to think about, too, whatever container that those cremains are placed in has to go through TSA, or you're in trouble. So it needs to be something cardboard that can be scanned, or, well, that's pretty much it. There's not much.
And I will tell you that the least expensive way, the way that it happens a lot, is by U.S. mail.
Yes.
Or your family decides to drive a personal auto. Yeah, personal auto, exactly. Yeah, we do with U.S. mail, absolutely.
I had this question come up today on the phone. It's not cremation, but it's full body transportation across state lines or from another place. The gal's planning on moving to Missouri. She has a burial plot here next to her husband. She wanted to know, what were her options if she dies there. All she has pre-planned is the space. She has nothing else paid for. So I was trying to go through what was involved and what the cost might be. And then her question was, because typically we need to contract with a funeral home or a mortuary service that would transport that person, either in a van, if they're driving them here, or if we're flying, which we talked about. Her question was, can my family bring my body back in their own vehicle? And the answer is yes. Whoa. Annie had an experience when she was at Divorce Planning and Hunt that I remember several years ago, where the family had 2 loved ones killed, and they took them by rental truck back to Mexico.
Yeah.
So they went a long way, and so if you get pulled over, you need to have the permit, like she said. You need proof that why are these dead bodies in your car? But it is possible, and you would save the fee of the mileage or airfare, whatever would be involved otherwise. So if your family's comfortable doing that, you're welcome to do so with the proper paperwork.
Yeah. Typically, that's not usually happens, but I have had a few situations where they have done that. So a couple, and there is a lot of paperwork that's involved when obviously go to Mexico. So that's a whole nother session, but.
Is that state to state
Yes.
and not just country
Right.
or anywhere? I have an aunt that, says, oh, it just is so expensive to take across the state line. Well, if we could just stick her in a truck. I mean, seriously.
That's how, honestly,
Yeah.
honestly, my grandmother years ago passed away in Des Moines, Iowa, and she's buried in Durban. And my uncle, who was a PA, that's exactly what he did. He had a pickup truck that had a cover over it, and he brought her across 2 states, Missouri and obviously Kansas. So it absolutely can be done, like Brian alluded to, though. You really want the proper documentation. And it's not difficult to get. It's really not.
Yes.
Yeah, to cross state lines, you have to be involved.
Don't just take them from her living room.
That will be a big issue. Don't do that. Yeah.
So the question is, the body does have to.
It does for Kansas and leaving Kansas also. So anyone coming in and going out has to be embalmed if it's traditional.
If you have, like, if I prepay my funeral, start prepaying now,
because of my health conditions, and I die, say, 10 years down the road, is it at that cost, or does it stay, or will my family have to come up with the additional amounts of what that cost is as of that date?
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
All right. Very good question. I heard two questions in there. One of them was about your current health condition, which may or may not be an issue depending on the exact condition you may or may not have.
It is,
We do ask certain health questions, all right? Depending on the answers to those certain health questions, some of which people think are an issue, really aren't an issue. But if it is a yes answer to one of their health questions on the life insurance that we use, that doesn't mean you can't do it, and it doesn't mean it's going to cost you any more because you have a health condition. It simply means that there's a 2-year window where it's called a limited benefit. All right, so I don't want to get into the weeds on that too much, but it doesn't mean it's going to cost you any more. It just means there's a 2-year period while you're paying it. If you died in the first 2 years, they're only going to give you credit for what you paid into it rather than paying the entire balance off like you would if you were healthy at the time, okay? Second part of your question was locking in the cost. So, depends on the funeral home that you use. First of all, not all funeral homes guarantee their costs. I want to make that perfectly clear. One thing that sets Dignity apart is that we do guarantee our costs on anything that you prepay, cemetery, funeral, whatever, except for cash advance items that like obituaries, death certificates, ministers' gratuities, things like that. All right. So
We're free at Asbury, by the way.
Just the things we have no control over,
Right.
it's for a third party.
you can put money aside for those things, but it doesn't mean we're locking that pricing because they can change. Anything that the funeral home is charging for services or merchandise will be guaranteed through any of our funeral homes for the rest of your life until you die. No matter what our prices increase to down the road, your family wouldn't owe another dime for those things.
And you can go to other states with that, correct?
Yes. When you choose a Dignity provider, we are a nationwide network of funeral homes and cemeteries with over 2,000 locations throughout North America and Canada. I guess that's North America. Way north. If you use a Dignity Memorial provider and you prepay cemetery or funeral arrangements and you move more than 75 miles away from your current residence, everything you bought goes with you to any other Dignity cemetery or funeral home where you move. If you move to Russell, Kansas, that's more than 75 miles from Wichita. However, there is not a Dignity funeral home in Russell, Kansas. In that event, the money you had paid in your policy for your funeral, for example, would just convert to money. It wouldn't have the price guarantee if you use a different funeral home, but you still have all the money that you paid. So if you bought a $10,000 funeral and you bought a $10,000 policy to accompany that, as long as you use a Dignity funeral home, we'll honor that no matter where you go if you move away at any Dignity funeral home. You go to mom and pop Smith's funeral home and wherever, they're not obligated to honor that price if it wasn't prepaid through them. Most of them, and Annie will tell you, will act in good faith.
That's right.
They will say,
They're
"You
good
took
about
the
it.
effort to prepay, they will probably honor that price, even though they may be losing money. They want to serve their family.
They do, yeah.
Like we do.
Like we do that.
So we have done that too. So just so you know, it depends on the funeral home. I do know a number of funeral homes in Wichita that I won't name that do not price guarantee, or if they do, they charge you an extra fee depending on how long you want to price guarantee it for. The longer you want to guarantee it, the higher the premium or the cost is. Okay, so just know that. We shop around and ask these questions.
Research,
That's
yes.
just it, especially like back to the personal planning guide. Even if you're not using us, this is for you. Come and get one from our location, okay?
Yes.
This is yours to take home. This is an excellent tool, even if you go elsewhere. That's perfectly fine. All right, this isn't a sales seminar. This is an educational seminar. And that's what we aim to do, is educate and let people know what's all involved, not only with the at-need portion of a funeral, but at the pre-need as well. So, great questions. Keep them coming, please.
Okay, I have a question on prepayment and what happens if the state comes in and closes a place down. Example, our son is buried out southeast. We never had a problem. We were very fortunate. We got along with everybody. But the ended up absconding with some money and had to do jail time. Since there was no funeral director, it was shut down. So what happens with your money? Do you have any recourse to the state?
Okay. I don't know if everybody heard that or not, but her question was, so what happens if and we're using rough, let's say, we're just gonna say $10,000, okay? If she came in and prepaid for a $10,000 funeral, the next day the funeral home went out of business. We get that question all the time. As Brian alluded to, we are, in order to sell prearranged funeral in the state of Kansas, Brian and myself have to be licensed insurance agents. The reason for that is because when you pre-plan a funeral with us, that money is not held by Rest Haven, Lakeview. We don't hold, there's nothing to give you in return, nothing tangible. You haven't used it yet. As a result, that money goes to a company called American Memorial Life in South Dakota. And they're ensuring that that money is going to be there when a death occurs. Because you're absolutely right, that has happened. People have taken, funeral homes have taken money and then they burn down and people run off with the money, something like that.
Yeah.
So if you're, as a matter of fact, when you write a prearranged funeral at one of our locations, you don't even write a check to that location. Everything goes through American Memorial Life Insurance.
Funeral home never sees a dime until you die. So we have to file a life insurance claim electronically through American Memorial upon your death and prove that you died, death certificate.
That's what I do, yeah.
And then Annie at the funeral home gets paid electronically. The money goes straight to the funeral home once we perform the services and deliver the merchandise. We can't get that money until that's proven and you're actually deceased. So that's another question we get is, in the past, I've been here long enough to remember, 14 years, we used to use trust contracts when I first started, where the money was paid in a trust contract and the money was put in a bank and they kept it there and it earned some interest and whatever. We stopped using those a long time ago and went to the insurance because it's more, like you said, it's more secure and all that. But it also insures you if you die, depending on your health questions. If you did a 5-year payment plan through American Memorial on your funeral and you were healthy, assuming you're healthy at the time, during that 5-year payment plan, if you died at any time, they will pay off the remaining balance of your contract with that life insurance, okay? If you do have a health question or a health problem at that time, you have that 2-year window where if you died in the first 2 years of a 5-year plan, they will only give you credit for what you paid in, plus just a tiny bit extra. Once you're beyond 25 months, they will pay it 100% at that point, even with the pre-existing condition, okay? So with a life insurance plan, you do 3 years, 5 years, you can do 10, and you can, well, we don't do them here, but you can go 15, we don't do them, but I don't even do 10 usually, because most people, you get sick of paying that after 10 years. You wouldn't want to pay on your car for 10 years, so you get sick of it and you stop. So 3 years and 5 years, but at the end of it, you're paid off. That's the thing I want to make sure you understand, because a lot of people ask us, well, I already have a life insurance policy for $5,000 or $10,000. I'm just going to use that when I die, and that'll pay my funeral. Well, possibly. When you buy a traditional life insurance policy that's not through a funeral home, that life insurance premium, you pay it until you either die or you age out, because it becomes mature at a certain age, like 99 or whatever. And people live that long now, yes. So that money then is only money. That $10,000 policy is still going to be only $10,000 in 20 or 30 years when you die.
That's right.
However, the funeral costs have continued to increase every year. I've seen them more than double in 14 years since I've been doing this. And Annie will tell you, and I've been here long enough to see it too. So the truth is, the best way to do it is to go through the funeral home directly, have a contract for what you want. You get to pick everything you want, the type of service, the type of casket, the type of out-of-burial container, and on and on and on. But it's locking it in, where the life insurance you may have outside of that, like through Prudential or American Family or whatever your job, that's always just going to be money. And as long as you can, like me, I'm pot calling the kettle black. I only have life insurance through my job. So I don't have any separate life insurance for me and my wife or anything. So if I quit or Todd fires me, I don't have any life insurance, okay? So it's only as good as long as I work for this company. So I'm grateful that I work for a funeral home, and I've been there long enough that I get a really good discount, me and my wife, for the rest of my life.
I think I'm attached
As long
to
as I
you,
don't
so
embezzle money from the company. So, I'm not too worried about
there you
it.
go.
Most
You're
people
free.
don't work for our company, you get that benefit. So, keep that in mind. So,
And like Brian said, that $10,000 life insurance policy, it's great to have, but guess what? If you live another 40 years, you still have $10,000 while prices, and it's not just us, I don't want you to think, oh, Dignity Memorial is raising the prices that's any cemetery, that's any funeral home, that's anything, it's any car lot, it's anything, milk, gas, fuel, yeah, you name it, everything is subject to inflation, okay? Except when you lock in pre-planning, and that's what else that insurance company we were talking about, it's ensuring that those prices are locked in. So if you have a $10,000 funeral today, and you live another 40 years, then when you pass away in 40 years, they're going to sit down with the funeral director, they're going to find that contract, it's going to say $10,000, American Memorial Life is going to release that $10,000 you paid in, it's going to match up perfectly.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Hang on.
I have a question. Can you tell me what the procedure is for the family if the body is donated to like KU Med Center?
Yeah, that's an Annie question.
That's my question. To do that, it typically has to be set up ahead of time. We have forms at the funeral home, and you can go online and get them too. But to donate to KU, to the body program, they like to have all that preset. So at the time of your death, there's a window that we need to transport your body to them within 24 hours because there's no embalming or anything done to you. It's a call that we make once we get that, what we call a first call or the death call, comes into the funeral home and we know that there's a body donation, then we are reaching out to the people who's in charge of that and letting them know. And they're pulling your information and reviewing it and accepting you, and then we're making arrangements to get you into their care. So it can be done on the weekend, yes ma'am. Yeah. They're accessible just like we are 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Then there is a cost. There's a cost like with the funeral home for what we call, for the body donation cost. And mileage. Thank you. It's not, I could look at the price list, but it's not a lot. It's basically...
I think it's 12 or 1300.
Yeah.
All of our locations, it's
Yeah.
the same price. But with Wichita to KU, that's exceeding the 50-mile coverage that's included in our prices. So you're going to have an additional mileage to get to KU on top of that, which couple $200 or $300 for that. So it isn't free. People think I'll donate my body, nobody has to worry about it. That's not the case. So.
Yes, it does cost, and it is something you have to have set ahead of time because they want to know all your health issues and if they're going to accept you at the time of death, because they can refuse you too. They can say no.
They can change their mind even if you've been pre-approved.
Yeah.
And at the time of death, they decide you had something come up and they don't want you.
Right. Maybe if there's trauma to your body, or you've had to go to the coroner's office. There's all kinds of situations, but again, they hold the rights to refuse if maybe they don't either have enough room or just depending on the circumstances. I've never had that happen. Everything usually works out fine, contacting them and getting you into their care in a timely manner, no matter what day of the week it is or time. So.
Yes, ma'am. You're next.
If you have a prepaid service, am I correct that if it's paid for, you gather interest, or that thing gathers interest over time?
No.
Yes. Okay, good question. Yes, the way that funeral homes are able to guarantee their prices is that interest or growth on the insurance policy that you buy is retained by the funeral home. So that's how we offset the future increase in price, is that we retain any growth that it has. So yes, that is true. People are like, well, why don't I get that interest? Well, because you're not providing those services in the future, we are. We're guaranteeing that we're going to still honor that price no matter what. And in most cases, I think this is true, we end up losing money. In most of my experience, and Annie will tell you, we're writing off money. When we honor a pre-need from the past that has gone at need, meaning a death occurred, the funeral director is doing a new contract for the current charges of whatever was prepaid at the current price. then they're giving them a credit for the policy, for example, that was prepaid, which is less generally. And then any difference that isn't covered by that is written off. And if there is enough growth, the family gets to keep it. They get a refund.
Yeah.
If they're not on Medicaid.
Yes.
Caveat.
Yes.
So if the policy grows enough over time to exceed the future price of those same goods and services, and we don't need it because it's more than what we need, you will get money back. Okay, whoever your beneficiary is. So when we do a pre-need, we ask you for a beneficiary. Even though the funeral home is going to technically get assigned the money and paid directly, we still ask for a beneficiary, whether it's your spouse or a child, because if there is enough growth, they would receive that money. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does. Particularly, but if you're on Medicaid, how many of you have ever applied for Medicaid for a loved one or yourself? Anyone in here ever had to do that?
Okay.
It's a nightmare, okay? Yes.
Yeah.
So, do you want me to go into that or not?
Well, we've got
Do you
some
have
other
any
questions.
questions on Medicaid?
Well, we have other questions.
We have other questions. Let's do that.
Start going through the questions we've got. Yes, ma'am.
Is there such a thing as a one-stop shop where you would get your funeral plus your burial and the headstone and all that together? Or do you have to go do separate?
Okay.
Yeah.
Darn it. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Next question. No, so in terms of our network, Dignity Memorial, we have two what we call combination locations. And what that means is there's a funeral home and a cemetery on site. One of which being Rest Haven out west, one of the other being Lakeview, clear out east. Okay?
East is that way. He's wrong. East, west.
East. I don't know where I'm at. I have no idea where I'm at. Those would be considered one-stop shops because you are, from the time of your death, our staff will go out and bring you into our care. You will never leave our care until you are interred into the ground. So everything from A to Z is done within our staff. Whereas a lot of funeral homes may have to do third-party, whatever the case, cremations or whatever the case may be. We've got full crematory, we've got full preparation rooms, we've got professional staff that does everything from A to Z. So yes, absolutely, and it's you're sticking with one place, and it can be a lot easier. Absolutely.
And this is why, and I need folks to really start raising their hands so I can start getting a count, because Jerry was next. So I'm trying to work my way around the room. You need one too? Oh, no. Okay. But it's really important to know what you want, how much you really want to spend, and where you want to go with that, because you can have a huge, ginormous funeral, or you may want it very simplified. You have to know some of what you would like in advance. But hang on, Jerry's next.
Back to the body donation. Can you prepay that mileage?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
I'll get back over there. Stan, Bob was next. Yes, sir.
Organ donations.
Okay. How's it happen?
The three of us do not do them.
I do not do that part, but typically at the time of death at the hospital, those are questions they're going to ask you there. If that's your wishes. If it is, that typically will happen before your body is brought into our care. The perfect example is the iBank. If they're involved, they will call us and say, we want to kind of give you a heads up that Mr. Smith passed and he is an iDonation and we are going to be doing that, and we will call you when we are finished. So they are always in contact with us. The best thing that you can do is let your family know that you want to be an organ donor, and the hospital, and have it on your records. So if you are eligible at the time of your death, then they will go ahead and dispatch out those people to do that, including the iBank and donation. That doesn't affect us really. It's on your driver's license. Yes, I have it on mine. Yeah. So that's good too. And then letting your family know that that's your wish. And then once they're done with every detail they need to do, then they're contacting the funeral home and saying, okay, we're ready to release Mr. Smith into your care. You can come pick him up. So it can delay getting obviously into our care. So there is a little bit of time frame depending on the organ donation itself, like what type. So.
Hey, hang on. Okay. 1, 2, 3. It's 7 o'clock. And so we said that we were going to go till 7:30 with questions, and we obviously haven't, but I also understand your time is important to you too. Or, you know, some of us have to go to the bathroom and stuff too, so it's okay.
I can bring the mic if you need to, Pastor.
You can cut that out there.
I was just going to say, if you need to get something to drink, because we're going to continue. If you need to leave for a minute or whatever, if you need to leave for the evening, please know you can. We appreciate you being here for as long as you can, but we're going to continue with questions for as long as we possibly can. Well, like not midnight, okay, but yeah, we'll go a while longer here if there are more questions. So please hang on if you have them. We'll get to you, I promise. Yes,
So
ma'am.
we're not, oh. Body donation, the back end of it, the body doesn't, when you donate it, it's not the body's not necessarily gone forever, is it? My understanding was that there's a period of time. What do you want to do after a year? And do you take bodies back for a service at that point or interment?
With body donation, we need to research that a little bit. I don't know how to word it nicely. They're going to take you apart, actually, and they're going to do what they want to do with what they need to do. They will ask, you will sign paperwork for cremation to take place with whatever is in their care left at the time. And typically it could be anywhere from like a year to 2 years. So they will mail, by priority mail express, the cremains back to your loved one or the person that's on as your beneficiary on that paperwork to receive you. So you could schedule at that time when you received those cremains either a service, or you can hold a service at any time if you want. But yes, with an interment, yes. It could just be up to 2 years, I think. Don't quote me for sure, but I think it's 2-year process that you might not receive any remains back. So, or cremains.
Hang on, we're down here. I'll get to you, I promise.
I just wanted to talk about, you were talking about organ donations. Nobody should say I'm too old or I'm too sick or whatever for organ donation. I do that, that's kind of my field. And I've had a situation where I was a donor family and there were 17 different things that they used from that person. So just keep that in mind.
Definitely, and they do also have a lot of questions they're going to ask your loved one prior to doing that, even after the death has occurred. So a lot of them are very personal questions, maybe some things you don't know about your loved one because they are very personal. So they do a lot of questions and things prior to doing any type of organ, harvesting. So,
Is there an age limit on organ donation?
no. Yeah, I don't think so. I think you can do everything from skin to eyes to bones to organs to it's whatever is needed at the time.
They're willing to accept.
Right. That's what it boils
You
down
can
to.
try to donate anything at whatever age, but they may not take everything or whatever they want.
I didn't know if there was because I know like with if you want to have for somebody that has cancer and
You want to research or
they
whatever.
will not take you after you're past 70.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions, like 45 minutes of questions your family will go through. Even if it's on your card as your wish, as you want it, they're going to check before they do anything. So.
Can you give what the lowest cost per service would be and what's the top or average?
Average.
Are you talking traditional service or cremation? Both. Okay. I'll pass that to Brian.
All right.
That's a loaded question.
That is a loaded question, but I will tell you we have 5 funeral homes that we represent. 5 different, basically 5 different prices. Depending on which funeral home you choose, each one has their own price list. By law, they're required to have that. Every funeral home has certain reasons why their prices are what they are. Cost of business. That's the biggest factor, is how much it costs to run that location. How many staff, how big is the location, does it cost a lot to heat and cool and maintain and all that. So, Generally speaking, the smaller the location, the smaller the overhead, the less staff, the less expensive it is. Those savings are passed on to you. I can give you a range from our least expensive cremation of $1,595 to our most expensive cremation would be $3,695 for what we call a direct cremation.
Correct, that's no service.
No service, no cardboard container, that's just the direct cremation, bringing the loved one into our care, typically refrigerating them, then the basic service fee to meet with us and arrange everything and get all the paperwork and permits, and then finally the cremation itself. A traditional funeral, again, is going to vary. It's hard to say, there's so many factors. If you're going to be embalmed, if you're going to have dressing and casking, if you're going to have a visitation or not the night before, if you're going to have a service of some kind, vehicles, flowers, printed materials, so on and so on. What kind of casket? The casket is really the biggest determinant, is how much that changes. On average, the lowest traditional funeral with the lowest casket is probably going to start at about $4,000 and go up to 10 or more. Yeah. I sold an $18,000 funeral yesterday. That gentleman bought a very nice casket and a very nice vault, and money wasn't an issue, and he was basically duplicating what he purchased for his wife when she passed away 6 years ago. And that's what he purchased, the same casket and vault for her, and that's what he wanted to do. And that's what most people do. They usually do the same thing their loved one did for their spouse, typically. But there's a range. That's probably the most expensive funeral I've ever sold in 14 years.
They're very subjective. It's like anything else. It's what some people want, the best of the best. Michael Jackson had a $60,000 casket. Unfortunately, we didn't sell it to him.
Questions are back here. Hang on, I'm getting to you.
Okay, our entire family is in Tulsa Memorial Park in one section. So if we die here, have our funeral here, service here, it's over. You take over and take us to Tulsa, and then we have open and closing of the grave there.
Yes. Then the cemetery takes over, because there's two different entities. Even though we're under one roof, there are two different entities. You've got your funeral and you've got your cemetery.
Yeah.
So Tulsa Memorial is not owned by us. My sister lives in Tulsa, by the way, so Sky took. So anyway, it's a beautiful place. Tulsa, any cemetery like that, the funeral director, Annie, would be responsible to coordinate the transportation. We're going to drive you there. We're not going to fly you.
Locally, we would transport you down.
We would drive you down in a van or a hearse, depending what's available and what is going on.
Yeah.
And then depending on if you want any other services at the cemetery besides your standard committal, what they call a committal at the grave, where there's a tent. Usually the cemetery provides that as part of the opening and closing. That's part of the cemetery's charges, but we would be responsible to drive you there, and then the funeral director, that's when she would contact the funeral home there and say, hey, I'm coming from Kansas, can you send a funeral director to the gravesite to accompany me since I don't have a license?
And then when does that vault come into?
When?
The vault?
At the cemetery.
It can be either way.
Yeah.
If you can prepay it here.
Yeah, if it's prepaid here, then as the funeral director, we're talking to the vault company there. We have a vault company here in Wichita that we call, like Wilbert is our vault company that we use. I call and say, I have a family that's doing I have a family that's doing a burial in Tulsa, and I need to order a vault that needs to go down to your facility down there. And so they take that order and they fulfill it down there. And so the funeral director does all that ordering and coordinating, getting the grave opened and things like that. So
that short time period.
Yeah, it happens fast. It all happens very fast, but they're used to it being like this. I mean, when you all even hit the church door, I could very easily be doing the funeral for you the very next day. I mean, it can be a really fast turnaround. Linda, did you still have a question? Okay, I've got one over here. Are you good, Carolyn? Okay. And we are running into time here, so this is another reason why they want you to stop in and talk to different funeral homes and speak to them in person, because there are a lot of in-depth questions for each family that are very different, and it's hard to get them answered to the best degree in a forum like this one. So, that's why we start the discussion here, but we encourage you to continue your research yourself and continue asking questions of different places so that you can go somewhere you feel most comfortable in the long run. Yes, ma'am.
Who is the fifth dignity in Wichita? I have Rest Haven, Lakeview, Divorce, and Hillside. Who's the fifth one?
Advantage is part of our network. They're technically not a dignity provider because they don't carry the dignity brand logo. They don't offer everything that the other dignity providers offer as far as benefits and products and things. So they can't technically be called a dignity provider, but they are part of our network. That is our least expensive provider.
A lower cost provider.
Right. So we represent all of them. I can represent any one of them that you want. So I just want to point out in their packet on the top, there was a questionnaire survey. And I just encourage you all to take that home with you and review it and see if you can answer all the questions, because if you can, answer them. Put that sheet somewhere. Tell your family about it. Let them know what your wishes are. That's kind of the starting point. If you can't answer all those questions, then you need to start thinking about it. And if you don't know the answers, call me. That's my job, is to help you. I am a salesperson, yes. I make money by selling funerals. I'm not going to lie. It's a true story. That's how I feed my family and pay my mortgage. But I will talk to anybody, anytime, about whatever you want to talk about, whether you buy it from me or not. I've done this for 14 years. I wouldn't be doing it still if I didn't care about it, if I didn't love it, if I wasn't passionate about what I do. That's why we all do this, because Andy's passionate about serving families, Todd's passionate about helping families. We're all in this to help. That's the funeral profession. Whether you buy from me or not, that's besides the point.
We do have like a sign-up sheet over. If you want a personal planning guide, we are offering, we can bring you one to your house. You can come into any of our locations again and pick one up. But if you would like to sign up, you're welcome to. We appreciate the opportunity I appreciate the opportunity for Pastor Susan to invite us in to do this. It is so hard as a funeral director to sit across from a family and to have them not know what you wanted whatsoever and try to pull that from them. It's horrible. I've been on that side of the table. I know how that is too. I've lost my dad, and so I understand both sides of the table. So it is a very difficult decision to talk about. If you can get anything out of this, I hope that you have that talk with your family. Please tell them, because it is something that needs to be talked about, not just left at the time. Because unfortunately, we're all gonna go when God is ready for us. That's how I feel. So, yeah.
Can we talk to one of you guys but have services at Rest Haven or vice versa?
Yes, we represent pre-need. We represent any of our locations, so I can help with any funeral home that is part of our network.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to say we're at least I am constantly running up and down Kellogg from Lakeview to Rest Haven, back and forth. Brian does that a lot as well, because we want to be able to serve our families where it's convenient for you. Whether it be Hillside, Rest Haven, it doesn't matter. Yeah, you can talk to us and we can do whatever it is you need. Absolutely. And kind of to echo what Andy said, we've all three been in situations in that room where people don't have any kind of a plan in place, or it's an unexpected death. And if there's 5 or 6 siblings in there, it can take 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah.
It gets ugly.
It gets very ugly. And I will tell you, one thing I have learned very quickly in this business is that death does not have an age. So 55, 60-year-olds are saying, hey, I got plenty of time left. You don't know that. I'll just quickly share a personal story and why this business and this company is I'm passionate about it, and this is special to me. As Carol knows, back in February, my girls, I have 2 daughters. One turned 17 today, and I've got a 13-year-old. And I was extremely sick the night before. And I finally got up out of bed that afternoon, and they just happened to be home because it wasn't a snow day, it was an ice day. One of those days where it was real cold and icy. And I walked down into the living room, and my wife saw what I looked like, and she started talking to me, and she said, Todd, can you name these girls here? Which are my daughters. And I said, well, sure, that's Olivia. And I couldn't remember my 13-year-old's name. She thought I was having a stroke. So immediately we went to the hospital, I remember walking into the hospital. Next thing I remember, I woke up 2 weeks later out of a coma. I'm 44 years old. I ended up getting a blood infection from a little cut that I had on my side. Talk about not knowing when it's going to be your time. It was real close, folks. As Brian will tell you. Yeah, they gave you last rites?
That's right.
Absolutely. And I'm telling you, and folks, I'm in the business, and I didn't have anything put in place. I'm 44. What do I need to have things put in place for? Well, guess what I did? Well, when I got back up on my feet. Yeah, you can imagine. So I'm very passionate about it. It's very important to me. Again, this isn't, as Brian said, yeah, like anything, it's sales, but it's more than anything else, just protect your family. Because had I dropped dead that night, was my wife going to be able to come up, Allie going to be able to come up with $10,000 or whatever? You know? My parents would have got involved, her parents would have got involved, sure. We got something put in place now.
I know a lot of people who are like, this is a morbid thing to talk about, we're not that old yet, why are we doing this here? And I'm like, because it's never, you can't,
we don't know.
You don't know when, and also, you just, it actually gives you peace of mind as well.
And the other thing is, a lot of married couples, well, my wife's going to take care of me, or my husband's going to take care of me. Okay, so if you both get killed in a car wreck, which happens every day, go turn on 3, 10, or 12, who's going to take care of it? The children.
We might not know.
So
we've all married couples. I think we've all literally we've all been involved in those multiple death situations, and it's terrible as it is. Then you're making it worse because they didn't know nothing was pre-planned, and now their children or loved ones are going to have to deal with the two of them at the same time.
Sitting in that room with children trying to make decisions on their parents who both passed away from an untimely death is not fun.
It's
not fun.
It's a very it's a very tolling process, not only on the family to sit across and have no clue what they wanted or to go through, but it also for the funeral director to sit there, and we almost feel like we have to pry information out. And again, we know you don't want to be there with us. No one wants to be at our funeral home. Nobody wants to see us. We understand that. I tell families all the time, I'd rather see you out at the grocery store or the movies or out and about shopping. I don't want to see you have to walk through my door and I have to take care of you. But I can guarantee you that I'm going to take care of you the best way that I can. Susan knows that. Not any of our providers, all our directors are passionate about serving our families. But I like to say that, Hillside, we are 110% at taking care of our families at the time and being there no matter what your loved one's wishes are. We do all kinds of services. Again, that's something changing. So I think as long as families know what you're wanting and you give them that information, so when they come in on their worst day of their life, sitting across from me, I'm not having to pry out all this information that I have to have, but let alone, well, did they ever talk about cremation? Did they ever mention what kind of casket? Would it be wood or metal? I mean, because I got 2,000 questions and I got to have answers for them so I can do a service for you. So you can celebrate them. So that is extremely important to me. I mean, I've been there, like I said, on the other side of the table. I know how it is when questions come in. So it's just something, if you fill out one of those books or write your wishes down and let everybody know where they're at, where they can locate them, and so they know what you want.
Or Dad may have wanted a nice big service with a nice big wooden casket made out of cherry, but he didn't do anything about it, and the kids can't afford that. So guess what? Dad's getting cremated and put up on the mantle.
In a cherry box.
In a cherry box.
Because we have that.
I can tell you that, like being a pastor is a calling, being a funeral director is a calling all its own. And so if you have been at a funeral where it's very well run and you could see that the family was very well taken care of, the first thing you want to do is walk up to the funeral director and go, do you have a card? Because it does make, the funeral directors make an incredible difference. I have a daughter from another mother who lives up in upstate New York now, and she went here, Kirby K. Johnson, and she's from Asbury. Yeah, you all know Kirby. And that's where I learned really up close and personal really quickly that it takes a special kind of person, and there's some of them who it's just another day-to-day job for them and a paycheck, and there's some of them who are called to it, and you want the ones who are called to it, because it makes a huge difference. Yes, ma'am.
Just so you guys know, Grandma and Grandpa Smith, I know a lot of you remember them. They pre-planned our funerals, and that helped us because they have how many kids? 5.
Yeah.
So we were very blessed that Grandma and Grandpa did that.
Yeah, Jerry's just reiterating what we all know, that, or what we've just said, not what we know, that, the pre-planning made such a huge difference for
A lot of
them.
times that person who passed away was the glue that held that entire family together. And now without them, those are not fun.
I always tell families this is true story. You will never find a family after having a death and having to make arrangements at that time, walk away from that arrangement room. They're always going to say one thing. Either they were happy that everything was done, or they wish that everything had been done. They never say, "Oh, I'm so glad nothing was done." That never happens.
I've really enjoyed the last 6 hours.
That doesn't happen. They're either thankful it was, or they wish that it had. And so that's a true story. And you can't ever know the answers to whether you did the right thing or whether you did what they wanted, unless it's been prearranged. That's the bottom line. So.
And you'd be surprised at how much you want to do what they had wanted done, right? When my dad passed away, it was so important to us that we followed his wishes. They were very simple and easy for us, and so everybody's different. Again, know what you want, but you don't go by what you want at that point. I would have preferred to fly everybody in and have all my family together and, had a service. Even though he was cremated, I would have loved to have done that. But his wishes were to not have that. And even though what I wanted is okay, I feel much better because I did what he wanted. So let your loved ones know. Even if your kids go, "Oh, this is such a ridiculous
Don't
topic,
listen to your
you're
kids.
doing fine.
They don't know anything."
Why do we have to talk about this?" Sit them down and go, "I'm telling you now, you'd better listen." Because that's what my dad did to me, and I'm so glad he did.
Yes. They will thank you later.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
If you have more questions, they're here tonight. Thank you all very, very much for being here, because it wouldn't work if you weren't here. So thanks a lot, guys.
Love to see that.